All right, so now that we have completed our rig, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do a stress test or a rig test. So when we talk about this idea of something like a stress test, the idea is we want to test the rig to its entirety to make sure it can do everything that we need it to do. So what we're going to aim for with this particular one is we're going to aim to make the robot essentially move however we want it to move. In this case, it's going to be probably a hover. In addition to that, we're going to want to make it pick something up. We also might want to test our other rig just to make sure it works as well. And the idea is before we even start animating, we can make sure everything is working, nothing needs to be adjusted, so we're good to go. Now, in addition to this, we're going to be learning something new here besides just a stress test. This is going to be a workflow tip in terms of rigging. Basically, after you finish your rig, you test it, right? It doesn't need to be tested by an animator initially. It's best if you test it as a rigger because you will be surprised at the things you catch. A lot of the times what I catch is maybe a pivot's not working quite right. For example, on the body, maybe you discover, oh, the head can't rotate by itself. That could be an example with our character. We kind of found that in testing, but other examples might be something as simple as you named something wrong or you locked a channel you shouldn't have. So as a rigger, I think it's important to test it out before you pass it on because it can save a lot of time. Because if an animator opens it, they start doing their animations, they may not notice that control for a while. Next thing you know, it has to be kicked back to you. And then there's a bottleneck because whatever you were working on, you have to stop and correct that. And whatever the animator was working on, well, they don't have it to work on anymore. So hopefully they have something else lined up. If not, they're twiddling their thumbs. All right, so make sure you do your stress test. It will help everyone out in the pipeline. Now, the new thing we're going to be doing as an animator is something called hierarchy-based animation. This is a significant aspect of animating because it is what solidified 3D animation as a legitimate form of art. And what it essentially means is that when we look at a hierarchy, you animate it in the hierarchical order. So whatever is at top, you're going to animate first, then whatever's underneath that, second, and underneath that, third, so on and so forth. So that is the idea behind hierarchy-based animation. So when we're doing our animations with characters, when we're doing our animation test, we're going to want to try this out. So let's go ahead and get a test scene set up. I have a fresh Maya scene, and just remember we're going to use references for this. We're going to go to File, Reference Editor, and we can go ahead and hit this plus icon to add in our reference for our character. So let's do that real quick. Plus icon, we can come to our characters folder, robot, and in here you can see our rigging, and we have our rig, final rig version 01, and we can reference. So that was pretty quick to find. You'll have to hit the 6 key to activate your textures, and there we go. Now, while we're here, we might want to reference in our gem as well. So we can once again come into the plus icon in our reference editor, and we can reference in our gem. So let's come in here under our props, treasure, rig, and get that gem and reference that in here. Now you notice these are overlapping. This could be a bit of a challenge in terms of how we set things up. You can always unload things and reload things here. And you can see that my robot space is actually slightly smaller than my gem space, which worked out pretty well. But in the off chance you have issues, remember you can use the layers here. Now, there's something else I want to mention. You might notice that these have a pretty wordy front section here. And you'll notice over here a pretty wordy front section as well. These are going to be namespaces that are going on here. So what you're seeing here is the namespace. If we hit this plus icon, and if we go to the options on the right side here and scroll down, you'll see at the bottom there's something called namespaces, and you can change these. So by default, it uses this use selected namespaces as parent and add new namespace. What that essentially means is it's going to add the file name in front of your everything that's contained with that. It's going to be in front of every layer, in front of every object in the hierarchy. It's going to be in front of every material, which can be kind of annoying. The one I usually like to work with is the merge into selected namespaces, which is here. And we'll go ahead and do that for our main file. But for the test, since we've already brought these in with the namespaces set up the way they are, we'll leave them as they are. So let's say you want to change it after the fact. How can you do that? There is an editor where you can go in and you can manually adjust the namespaces, but you generally have to do it for every object in the scene, and it's a little bit of a annoyance. There are scripts that can help you do it as well. I have one at the studio I work at that I use every now and then if this happens, but usually the merge into namespaces saves us. Now, we'll come back to that later, but I do want to mention that while we're here. So let's go ahead and get started here and just start with our basic animation. You just have to think about how you want to test it. So the first thing I'm going to do is just have my robot come up. Now, with hierarchy-based animation, what we're going to do is we're going to look for the robot's placement control. And just to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to come over here and look for the treasure controls here, these ones here, and I can just toggle their visibility off. And you can see how these layers come in handy for animators when they have to work with multiple objects. We can just turn that off. And with our robot, you'll see this is our placement control. Well, let's test our placement control. I'm going to hit W here to use our move tool. And the purpose of this placement control is to move this around in the scene and initialize the character. So I'm just going to move it back from this area a bit here, and we'll make it an easy animation where the character just comes straight forward and grabs. Now, after this, the next thing we're going to do in the hierarchy is move the body control. So that is going to be this one here, and we can go ahead and move this up, and we can start to get a neutral pose. So we can think about how this character is going to look when they are just floating here. Notice I move the body first because everything down the line from the body is affected. And that's the idea of hierarchy-based animation. And the reason you want to do it in a hierarchy format is whatever's on top, everything else follows behind. So this affects everything. We wouldn't want to get the arms looking perfect and then move it because we wouldn't know exactly where to place things, right? That's the idea. Now let's move over here to the shoulder, and I'm just going to press E to get to rotate. And we're just going to rotate this into a nice relaxed pose, whatever that is for a character like this. I also might want to get the fingers out here and just a little bit more grabby looking. So they look like little crab claws or scorpion claws, some sort of claw. And we'll just rotate those to be forward, like so. And we'll do the same for the other side. Now, notice how I did that hierarchical. I did the shoulder first, rotated it into place. Then I came down and did the elbow, rotated it into place. Then I moved to the wrist or the fingers and rotated these into place. You'll notice because the fingers are attached to the wrist, I could position them first technically. But then I did the first joint of the finger, second joint of the finger, first joint of the finger, second joint of the finger. That way I have those set up. All right. Now, one thing I'm noticing on the fingers here, I might actually not want them to be able to swing sideways. I might want to come back and just make this a straight Z-axis. That way I don't have to worry as an animator about accidentally putting a channel on the other areas. Same with these. I might want these to just be clamps. You can see how I've changed this up. I could zero these out and zero these out and do the same over here. But on the wrists and the elbows, I think I might keep those the same. I think it might be advantageous to be able to do this type of thing. So maintain certain functionality as a robot, but I think here it'd make more sense for this to be a hinge, all right? But you can see how that hierarchy-based posing works. Now, I haven't set a keyframe yet because I'm just getting an initial pose here, but let's say I notice a change like that and I want to make it happen. I could come in here to File, Save Scene As. We're going to save this into our characters, robot, rigging, and I'll create a new folder here called testing. And we'll just make this our rig test 01. We can make this named ASCII and save as. And because we're using references, when I come over here and go to open scene and we hop into our rig version 1 here, we can restrict the channels here with no issues. So remember, to restrict channels, what I want to do is just shift select these. So I'm just going to hold shift and click on these till I have them all selected. And then over here in the channels, I'm just going to highlight rotate X and Y, leave rotate Z, and do a lock and hide. So now the only thing these can do is rotate Z, and I can't accidentally rotate on Y or X. All right, so that'll make it just a little bit easier to quickly go in there and grab the control. So let's come back to our recent files here, go into our rig test 01. And if we take a look at these fingers now, you might notice they have straightened out because there's a change to them, but you'll see they only have a rotate Z left on them. So we can just pose these again real quick here, and you'll see all the rest of the controls stayed in place. And that's exactly what we're looking for. So we can confirm that our referencing is working, which is actually good. Sometimes there are issues with referencing in Maya versions. I have encountered it before, and it is a bit of a nightmare. And sometimes when you reference a rig from a different version of Maya, for example, I've been working in 2020 at the company I'm at because it has the standard surface shader, but a lot of my coworkers are still in 2018 or earlier versions, which is common in industry. And a lot of the times when I give them a rig, they tell me it doesn't work. So I have to re-export it from older version. It's quite fun. Okay, so we got our character pose. Let's go ahead and just get the head tilted. We're going to have him look at this gem here. That way we have an idea of where it's at. I might want to turn on wire on shaded just so I can see it better. And there we go. Okay, so that's going to get our character all set. Now, I'm just going to highlight all the controls here and hit the S key to set that first keyframe. From here, what we're going to do is some quick pose-to-pose animation. We're going to make it move forward and we're going to make it grab this. Now, when you're doing a rig test, you don't really need to worry about timing. You should kind of be conscious of it, but these are generally tests that no one else is going to see. And your goal as a rigger is to just get through them quickly, make sure the poses work, make sure everything's reading correctly, and then move on to your next task. So you're not trying to make a beautiful animation. You're trying to make something very sloppy, very quick to confirm that there's not going to be any issues for the animator. So let's move forward 24 frames and just make it move at a 1 second pace. And we're going to start hierarchical animation again here. So I'm going to grab the body here. I'm going to move it forward and down where the character is going to be looking at this gem. And what I might want to do is think about where the fingers are, where the grab's going to need to be. Just kind of position it there. I do want it to move straight forward. I'm accidentally moving on Z there, so I don't want to make them all wobbly here. And as the character comes down, we can think about what we might want to do with the arms here. Maybe I'm going to move them back and in a little bit. And we could even make the elbows come in here a little bit. I don't really know. Just doing some test animation. And just make sure that it looks okay moving and there's nothing strange about it is essentially our goal here. And we can have the character maybe tilt a little bit more. Okay, so once we like that, highlight everything and just hit that S key, and now we can play it forward. Now, I recently reset my preference file, so you'll see we're teleporting. So just a reminder, if at any point you reset your preferences, you can come down here to the animation settings, pull these up, and just set your playback speed here from free to 24 times 1 and save. And that'll get you all set. So let's go ahead and play. And there we go. We have our robot moving down. And you can see that complex animation we're getting here of this entire body moving. Now, from here, we can prepare the pickup, and I'll do this kind of quickly. We'll just go ahead and do maybe 12 frames of anticipation here. So we're going to think about coming out and then coming back in and how we're going to grab. Are we going to grab with one claw? Are we going to grab with 2 claws, right? And there's a lot of things we need to think about. But generally, the way anticipation works is you go in the opposite direction that you're going to act in. That's a general rule, but it's not always true. So let's come to 36 here, and let's prepare by maybe drawing the arm back. Notice I'm not moving the body. We're going to keep that stable. We're going to open our fingers up here to prepare the clampers. And we might have him rotate it sideways because I'm noticing that we might have an issue here getting underneath the rock. So this could be useful for us when we go to animate our shot. And I'm going to have this one come out here and maybe do something similar. So maybe we're showing the robot kind of thinking, which claw is going to be best for this, or maybe we'll have this one go up and, they'll realize that, if I go this way, I'm going to get stuck in the ground. So we can think about how we want this character to operate here. And we might have this character just go back a smidge on the body. Now, notice I broke the hierarchy there a little bit in terms of the order, right? I did the body last. So generally, when you get started, you want to start with the top of the hierarchy, but as you move forward, if you find a slight adjustment, you can make that tweak. So it's a rule general to follow, but it's not a law, meaning that if you break it, it's not going to ruin the animation. So let's just hit the S key on that, and what we should have is the character comes down and then recoils backwards for about a frame. And then let's have them move forward. Now, I'll just do this on 12 frames again here, 48. That's half a second, and I figure during testing, you want to be able to see it, so that's a good amount to have. Now here, I am going to move the body forward first because I want to get the idea of the position I want this to be in initially. And then from here, I'm going to work on getting the arm around the gem here. So I'm going to switch to my rotates. I'm going to rotate this elbow forward a bit. And this is going to be a little bit tedious here, but we need to know if this can actually grab this. So I'm just looking for when those pincers get around there, and that should be a good enough position. And from here, I want to try and lock in, place the hand, and utilize all the controls if I can, just to have a little bit of movement there. And that's going to give us a way to hold this. Now, notice that my view from the top was a bit deceptive there. I thought it was already touching it, but you'll notice it actually has a ways to go here. So I can move this onto here. And if you want to turn off your textures, remember you can press this button here, which is going to use default textures. Sometimes that's useful when animating, especially when we have transparent objects like this, and we can get a better read on if this actually looks like it's clamping down on these surfaces. If there's a slight bit of penetration, I'm not going to worry about that at this stage, especially since we're just doing a test animation. So don't worry about that. Don't try and get it perfect. Save that for your actual animation file. Okay, so here we're going to have this arm come back and maybe close fist, so to speak, since this hand's kind of done doing its grabby business, and that hand's done doing its grabby business. And we'll just kind of get this one out of the way, even though we might want to bring this one in for a little bit of support. And I did kind of rotate the head in the last frame. Oops, I don't want to rotate the body. That's a little bit annoying, but we'll go ahead and rotate the head again here to be clamping on that. All right, so now we'll hit the S frame, and we can see the character is going to come in, clamp around that, and now we want it to lift and move away. Now I'm just going to lift and move away without really caring too much about how this is going to look. And we're going to do this in a certain order. I'm going to do the character first, and then I'm going to worry about getting the gem to follow next. So we're currently at 48. I want to get this about 24 frames. Why not? So that will be 60 at the 20, and then 4 more would be 74. And I'll start with the root control of the character. We'll just move the character back up here. And then we want to think about what the character might do after lifting it. And I think it would move the gem up towards its head, maybe look at it a bit. It's a robot, so we don't really need to do too much twisting. And then maybe this arm would come down in a relaxed pose. So we can rotate that down, and get those fingers to be in what we might perceive as a relaxed position for a robot. So something like that, and that'll be our final key. So let's highlight all those and hit S, and now you'll see that we have this complex animation of our character coming in, grabbing that gem and lifting it. Now the next thing is, how do we get the gem to follow the character? Well, let's turn on the gem's controls here, and let's save while we're at it. One of the most annoying things to do is have it crash during a test animation. So let's go ahead and just save the scene here. And what we want to test with this particular control is the ability to do a constraint to make it work with our rig. Okay, now how does that work exactly? We're going to constrain its rig to the hand rig of the character so it doesn't move. Now this is a little bit of a complicated animation technique. So what I want to do is pause here, and as a challenge, what I want you to do is do a little test animation of your robot coming in and picking up the gem in preparation for doing this constraint. So go ahead and give that a shot. And then when you come back, let's go ahead and talk about setting up this constraint to make it move with the hand. All right, so welcome back. What we have here is we have our character coming in. we have the character grabbing and lifting, and we want this gem to follow. Now, if we take a look at this gem and we expand out its hierarchy, you'll see that we set up this hierarchy to have some specific groupings where we have our placement control here. Remember, that's just for placing in the scene. It's already good to go. We have our main control here that lets us move its position. And then we have this control here, which lets us kind of tumble it. And on top of that, we have some additional groups here where we have the rig. And if we expand these out, you'll see we have an offset, a control, and down here you'll see that we have these multiple ones here where we have a parent group and a pivot offset. So the parent group here is designed to be used for parenting for a parent constraint. Now, I know it's a little bit annoying with these prefixes here. Unfortunately, I can't delete them there, but you'll see we named that one treasure parent group. Now, the way this is going to work is we need to come to the frame where the hand grips it. And this is the reason why we want to get the character in here first. We want to find that exact frame where this finger clamps, and we want to do our constraint at this frame. If we do not do it at this frame, it will be attached at a different point, and it will not have the same effect, okay? So the way we can do this is we can select the wrist control here, since that's what's controlling the fingers. Then we can control select our parent group here in our treasure rig, and in our either rigging or animation menu set, go to constraints. Now, since we're animating this time, let's swap over here to animation and come up here to constraints. And in here, we're going to want to go to parent, but go to the options because you want to make sure this maintain offset is turned off. And once you have that set, try hitting apply. And what we should see is after we hit play, this lifts the gem off the ground. But we have a bit of an issue because you'll notice before this frame, the gem's already there. So it looks more like it's using the gem as a shovel. So the trick with animation constraints is to animate the animation constraint. So what we can do is go back to that frame here where the character is setting this down. We can select our animation constraint here, and we can toggle something called animation weights. Now, all constraints have a weight, and you will see it located here in some way. It will be located by a W and some sort of a number. Objects can have multiple weights assigned to them, so this is just weight 0, meaning the only weight, and you'll see it's currently set to 1. When you have a single constraint on a object, you can think of this as an on-off switch. So what we can do is we can come to this frame here that this is occurring on. So for me, that's frame 48. We can right-click on the weight and we can select key selected. And what you will see is this gains a keyframe. And that's actually a trick you can do to keyframe just about anything in Maya, is using the right key click key selected option here. Now what we can do is come to a frame before at 47. You'll notice it's still following. If we go to 47, we can type 0 into here. And if you look at the gem, when I hit enter, you should see it moves just a little into place. And what that's going to do is it's going to give this a weight of 0. So in short, what that means is the constraint's not on. From here, we can right click in key selected. And if we go ahead and hit play now from the start, you'll see it's currently not grabbing the gem. And if I hit play, it'll come in and it will grab the gem and lift it. So you can see that is the process there of grabbing and lifting a constrained object. Now, if you try and get this robot to set this down, you might run into some issues because it might jump back to that constrained location, which is where multiple constrained weights might come in handy, or you might need to just cut the shot so that way you can edit in a different shot. But you can see everything is working as we intended. So that additional group there is perfect. We can also try adding some secondary animation here. We've kind of made this perfect already, right, in terms of placement, but we should still be able to animate this portion here. So if I were to set a keyframe here, for example, and the character were to lift this, and let's say I wanted it to rotate in their hand a little bit, you can see that we would be able to do that. So we should see this lifting and rotating slightly. So we have achieved everything we set out to do with this rig. We can consider our rig test done and this ready for animation. Okay, so as a challenge, what I want you to do is I want you to try completing the animation. So hopefully you already have your character coming down and picking it up if you don't get that in there. And then the next thing I want you to try and do is try doing the animation constraint on off toggle here. So just remember the way that works is you set it up, you make sure the hand is who's in charge. You come into that group we added, and if you don't have that group, make sure you add it or grab the provided asset to use. You control click that parent group, that way it is selected. You do that constraint, and then you can toggle the constraint weight for the animation purpose. All right. So go ahead and try that out. Try using animation constraints. And then what we'll do next is we'll plan out our storyboard for our scene, and we will start animating.